Welcome to the podcast with the expansion. This is the expansion podcast, and we are relaunching it. So, hey, you better take a moment and listen to those other podcasts that we have up, because we'll be deleting those after a while. This will be the official launch of the podcast with this relaunch. So, my name is David James. I'm the head admin of the expansion Facebook group, and with me are a couple of people. One is an admin, the other is a moderator. There's James Puso.
Hi, I'm James Puso, the video monkey for the expansion, admin as well, as he said. I'm an animation student, too. So, yeah.
All righty, then. And we also have Danny Smith. He's a moderator for the expansion, as well as he heads up his own group. Danny, you can talk about it.
Hello, everybody. I'm Danny Smith. I run the Alliance of Star Wars Fanatics Facebook group, which is now getting into a website, and we will have something big coming shortly in the podcast arena. I'm also a moderator for the expansion, lifelong Star Wars fan, dedicated to trying to fix the rift in the fandom.
That's right. That's exactly what we're about. You see, the thing is that for the expansion, we are a group of fans that are focused on the expanded universe in the original canon of Star Wars before the new canon got started. And so, we recognize there's a new canon, and, we very much recognize the original canon. And basically, because so many people are out there focusing on the new canon, we're like, hey, there's still the original canon, and it's got a lot of great stories in it. And really, we would like to see the original canon continued. That would be great. There is another group out there that has really shown themselves to not be the best to promote wanting more of the original canon. But, just because there's some people that are not behaving themselves doesn't mean that there isn't a bunch of fans that, would really like to, see it be done in a peaceful manner. Just say, hey, let's have some more expanded universe under the Legends banner. And so that's what the expansion is about. Our focus is on the original canon, but not at the expense of, saying, oh, do away with the new canon. And heard Danny Smith there. He's admin of the Alliance of Star Wars Fanatics, and there's a lot of people in there that are new canon fans as well as original canon fans. With a lot of the focus on the the stuff that's been coming out with the new canon. And so Danny and I formed a friendship, and we're working together to, like you said, heal that rift.
Beautiful.
So absolutely. Hopefully we can do it sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so too. And
amen, brothers.
And so what we're going to do, just kind of as a start here, we're going to kind of do like a pro and con type thing. We were talking online the other day, and we went over. We each came up with pros and cons for each canon, both the original canon as well as the new canon. And so I'll go ahead and start with my pros and cons, and then James can mention his, and then Danny, and then we'll just talk about it. So, so for the original canon, a good pro that I see for the original canon is how vast it is. It's a vast and cohesive story which is told over the many eras and has many, many connections along the way, which adds to the enjoyment of the story. Now, one of the cons that I've always noticed with it in the last decade or so was that it had grown so big that new people had problems figuring out how to begin reading it. Now, of course, a lot of times I found that once they did start reading it, it didn't seem to be too much of a problem after that. But with some people, it was, and so that would be a con. Now, for the new canon, one of the pros that I've always recognized is that it's a fresh start for anyone that wants to jump into an ongoing story with the universe that's building, for the Star Wars universe and everything. Because this new canon story still has just enough books that it's real easy for anybody to get into. Now, I haven't really bothered with it myself because, quite frankly, there's so much of the original canon left. I'm just still on that. I may get more into the new canon at a later date. I don't know. I've watched The Force Awakens, and I plan on seeing Rogue One. But right now the movies are about it for me. Now the con for the new canon is that for original storytelling, from what I can see and what I've heard, it seems to already be borrowing too much from the original canon. Now I'm really looking forward to the Thrawn book. That is one book that I'm going to be picking up. But even like with the Force Awakens movie, there was just a lot of things in there that I was like, okay, here's some stuff from the original canon, here's some stuff. Like, why did they do that? So anyway, and I know that some people say, hey, it's kind of honoring the same universe, and if that was the intention, that's good. But for some of us who are really anticipating some original storytelling, it seems kind of like, it's kind of a con for me. So James, what were your pros and cons?
Well, I suppose my general pros and cons are sort of similar to yours. I believe what I'd mentioned last night was, as far as the Legends timeline went, the big pro was that it expanded the mythos of Star Wars in a way I hadn't quite seen any fictional franchise do before. For example, if you were to read Lord of the Rings or something, it has a big history there. But with this, you could actually experience this history, experience all the specific stories, and it was pretty amazing most of the time, right? But I suppose the con that had always sort of stood out to me was that, at least at the very, very early beginnings, I didn't really feel as though it was really intended to branch out like it did, And so you had a few weird stories like Splinter of the Mind's Eye, for example, right? That came out before even the second movie, Empire. And so you had a lot of heavy Luke and Leia shipping, and then that gets really weird later on, doesn't it?
Certainly does.
Yeah, and, later on you'd have, the little, the Jedi Prince series, which was actually the first series of Star Wars books I ever read, ended up getting
Trioculus.
Yes, Trioculus, yes. And those were things a lot of people it got weird at certain points as it went on, and it had those cracks here and there as far as the con goes for the Legends timeline. Now as far as the new canon goes, I've probably experienced more of it than David, but less than Danny. I've seen the new movie, I've read the first book, I've read kind of sort of the first comic series, and I watch Rebels, and I've seen a lot of the Clone Wars. So I don't know the whole picture. I'd say its biggest pro so far is that it was planned to branch out like it has, so the foundation they lay is very much a foundation that's built for growing. But I'd say its big con is that it hasn't really tried anything really ambitious as of yet. It doesn't really seem to have a very strong autonomy of it. With the Legends timeline, you'd have your Old Republic kind of stories, and you'd have a lot of the post-Jedi stories that were really telling a totally new thing, whereas so far the new canon seems to be filling in gaps, telling a backstory here and there, very, very, not super low-key, but, kind of not really taking the full advantage of the fact that it has this nice, solid foundation and years of planning to go on. That's it.
Those are good, fair points. So, Danny, what would be the pros and cons that you would see for each canon?
Yeah, thank you, David. And those are great points, James. So for me, I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan who has not gotten anywhere near into the Legends or the original canon as either of you two gentlemen have. But the pros for me is that it was always there. I mean, no matter how big of a Star Wars fan one considered themselves, it was this vast open universe for which spanned, I believe, something like 20,000 years. And it was amazing that you can just jump in at any point in the timeline and you can read stories about what happened in this amazing universe. Basically, anybody could jump in and you could play. I mean, there was so across all different medias too. I mean, you have your novels, you have young adult novels, you have comic books, television, you have video games, which were a big part of it. And the way it spanned so many different eras, it was literally a limitless story that could perceivably keep on going forever. So I think that was the biggest pro for me. As far as a con, I felt there was, like James had said, to piggyback on him a little bit, there wasn't much of an oversight as to the direction of where it was going. It seemed to me that when a good idea for a story came about, they would go for it, whether it be in a video game or a novel or a comic series. They would go for it and kind of fit it into the continuity as they went. And as far as the actual direction of it, I believe Leland Chee made the Holocron, but that wasn't until, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say 2002?
It was sort of, the earliest parts of it were kind of in 1991 when, like, Thrawn took off and they started doing that, but, yeah, it wasn't really a formal thing until then, from what I understand.
Yes, and as far as, and I'd say the EU really took off and gained public notice in 1991 with Timothy Zahn's work, the 3 books, and what is referred to commonly as the Thrawn trilogy, which were amazing works of art. The man has genuine skill in being an author and being a writer. I don't think the story resounded with as many people as they would have hoped, but I think that it was immensely successful among those who did love it, which I will actually get into in one of my pros for the new canon shortly, is that it had some amazing ideas that, as far as the con side, to me, just simply didn't fit into the source material. Even with the Holocron, it was said that the most important canon, I guess they call it the G canon, source material for all else is the 6 movies. And at the time, I guess the 3 movies back in 1991. So I didn't see a lot of oversight there as far as I'm concerned, as far as how are these actually going to fit in and what is going to happen in the future. Now for the new canon, the Pro, like the EU, it has the potential to be basically limitless. You know, like James, you were saying, thus far they really haven't tapped into that possibility yet. It's basically been a lot of filling in the gaps in the original trilogy, a little bit in the prequel era, not as much as many would like, even myself, and mostly concentrating on a new post-Return of the Jedi storyline. Now, as far as that goes, though, they now have the Lucasfilm story group, which to me is the biggest pro of the new canon of all. They have, like you said, a foundation for which all else is going to span out. They claim, or at least Pablo Hidalgo claims, to have a general sense of where the story is going for the next 10 years. Now, he isn't specific as to whether this is all going to be post-Return of the Jedi, if this is all going to still fill in yet more gaps in the original trilogy, if they're going to go back to the prequels, and if they have plans to go back even further into the Old Republic, which they have hinted at a bit in the show Rebels. They did have some of that last year toward the end with the Sith Holocron, and that's pretty exciting. But the best part to me about that is that they are now integrating various forms of media. They have Saw Gerrera, a character from the Clone Wars series, pretty good character too. He's mentioned in Bloodline, which is a book that takes place only 6 years before The Force Awakens, and now he's going to be shown in an older form than he was in the Clone Wars in the movie Rogue One, played by Forrest Whitaker. Now, as far as I know, that's the first time that this has ever happened, where you have a character that was originated from a television series, mentioned in a novel, appearing in an actual live-action movie. So that, to me, is extremely exciting, and I can't wait to see what the possibilities for the future are for things like that, including someone like Thrawn, who is now going to be in the show Rebels. Now, I know there's a lot of varying opinions on how this should be done, if it should be done at all, actually, because many Legends fans many original canon fans want the story to remain separate. Let's have 2 separate canons, and just everybody can be happy. But they seem intent, at least for the time being, to bring in parts of Legends to try to maybe appease some of the Legends fans, and also the new canon fans who really enjoyed Thrawn. I love the character of Thrawn. I think he was the best thing to ever come out of most of the Legends stories, aside from some of the Old Republic stuff, which I really enjoyed. Now, the con for the new canon for me is that its very existence has now caused a pretty big rift in the fandom, as far as I'm concerned, worse than the prequels ever did. You know, we have many people who are quite upset that they have been studying Star Wars and its history and its various eras for their entire lives. And now, just a little over 2.5 years ago, or a little under 2.5 years ago now, they'd say that in a way, they kind of say that information and knowledge is basically irrelevant to the story now. Yes, those books are there, they can be read, they're not stopping production on, like, repeating the publications, but for the time being, they're not continuing any of the various story arcs that were ongoing, and the knowledge, especially the post-Return of the Jedi era, that all these people had, including you two guys, is now defunct. You know, if you had asked David, if I had asked you, or James, if I had asked you back in 2013 even, if I had said, hey, you know, what happens after Return of the Jedi, you would have been able to give me hour after hour of story and let me know exactly what happened with Thrawn, with the Solo twins. You got Jason and Jaina, and then Anakin later, and there's just this vast story, and that even went over 100 years past that, as far as I know. And now they're telling you that it's...
Yeah, it went into the Cade Skywalker era, that's for sure, up in Legacy. So you're quite right, it was over 100 years.
So now they're telling you that, well, those were nice stories and all, but that's not how we're going to tell it. That's not going to be the official, if you will, Star Wars story. Which I can see now that, you know, it was handled poorly, and I can see why, that there are a lot of people who are upset, you know, and if a child these days was to ask that, you know, what happens after Return of the Jedi, depending on who you ask, you're going to get two different answers. And then you're going to get fighting between the people answering, saying, well, my story was better, well, my story is official. And, you know, that's basically where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, why we really need to, you know, all of us, not just us in the podcast, not just us as admins, but all of us as fans really need to work to heal this rift, because you know, one of the ways that I've said, you know, several times to different people is that I see the original canon and the new canon being kind of like the novels that were put out for Dungeons and Dragons. You got your Dragonlance, you got your Forgotten Realms, and then there's like you know some other series that you know were hit or miss, you know, at different times. I think they had something called Dark Sun back in the late 80s, early 90s, or something like that. But you know, but you got your fans that really like the Dragonlance storyline, and then you got your fans that really like the Forgotten Realms storyline, and then there's like a lot of fans that like both. And that's kind of how I see things with the original canon and the new canon. Is that you know, you're going to have people that really aren't interested in the new canon. I mean, there's some people that are to the point where they don't even want to watch any of the movies. Now, myself, I was automatically interested in at least watching the new trilogy. Now I'm kind of interested in watching Rogue One as one of the added films. I'm not too sure if I want to watch a Han Solo film, because I'm very much a fan of the Han Solo trilogy that A.C. Crispin, rest in peace, that she wrote, and I really enjoyed that, and that to me defined Han Solo, and I'm not sure if I want to watch a film that's going to replace that in my mind or argue with that in my mind. But at the same time, I mean, Rogue One touches on the end of the Han Solo trilogy, or that time period, and I know that is going to kind of do it. So I'm kind of like going, okay, well, let me see how Rogue One turns out. Let me see if I can you know, kind of work with the two different storylines, because that's how I had to do it with Marvel's Ultimate line of comics. I mean, for a long time there, I didn't read any of the Marvel's Ultimate line. It was just kind of like, okay, there's this new modern version of Spider-Man and X-Men and whatnot. I was like, okay, it's a different story. It doesn't have anything to do with the main Marvel Universe, so I just kept collecting Marvel Comics. And then at some point, I came across this really thick, hardback book at Barnes & Noble, and a Barnes & Noble exclusive, if I recall correctly, where they had put, like, I think about 60 issues or more of Ultimate Spider-Man together. And I remember thinking, wow. And so I sat down at the Barnes & Noble. I had a day off, and I just sat down. I popped it open, and I started reading. It was a literal comic book, comic emphasis on the book. And I didn't even finish it, but I was just like, I was so enraptured into the story, just turning page after page. I was like, wow, it was a completely different take on Spider-Man, but I was enjoying it, and I was seeing the element. So it's possible with Rogue One, and it's possible with the upcoming Han Solo movie that I might be able to, differentiate that way, and if I can enjoy it, that would be fine. But I mean, by and large, as far as the books go, there's very few books that I'm even interested in getting into with the new canon. I mean, I'm definitely interested in seeing how Zahn does with the upcoming Thrawn novel. I'm very interested in that. I still haven't read Tarkin by James Luceno, but I want to, because that's a novel that even James Luceno, has said could be with either canon. Now, I do understand there are certain elements that are definitely specific to the new canon, but at the same time, he was writing that before the announcement was made, and he was, when he wrote it, it was intended to go with the original canon. So I am interested in reading that and seeing how that can maybe kind of blend into both. And I'd like to hear from you guys. What are y'all's opinion about? Is it possible that maybe, at some point in the future, there could be novels, comic books, cartoons that could, or even movies that could wind up being in both canons? That just like the original 6 and how Clone Wars was supposed to be. I guess I don't know if that's still considered an expanding universe or not, but an original canon or not. But what do you guys think about future projects that could possibly be in both canons? James, Danny?
Well, if I'm being honest, I kind of feel like right now there's this whole break was so uneven that it's like it seems almost weird not to. Like even right now, when you look at it, like Darth Bane, the character, for example, he's canon in the new canon. He's there, but his stories aren't. Kind of weird, right?
Yes.
So it kind of makes sense to slide that over. Darth Plagueis, the character, canon. And then there was all those comics that were adapted from the Clone Wars TCW that are basically just offshoots of that Dark Horse did. Only Son of Dathomir is still considered canon from those, from what I understand. So I'd say the threads are already still kind of connecting them. I mean, it was not an even break. And I mean that new Dark Disciple, for example, which was a direct continuation off the Clone Wars, like that was like unfinished episodes. That could be in both, couldn't it? And so yeah, I mean, I think crossover is possible. It should be happening now, actually. But excuse me. I guess they just haven't cared to elaborate very much what they're doing with regards to those. Danny?
Yeah, and I really think that should be easily done. I have read Tarkin. He does pull some of the stuff from Plagueis, so I guess that is now considered canon, but then the rest of the Plagueis book isn't. The character is, like you said, with Darth Bane, but his background story isn't. And I've always thought since day one when this was announced that there really isn't much need to decanonize basically anything from the Old Republic. I mean, none of that really has too much of an impact on today's story, especially with the lineage of the Sith going from Darth Bane leading to Darth Sidious. I don't see why that needs to be rewritten in any way. But, we'll see what they do. I think what it is right now is they're kind of winging it a little bit. It's kind of like, okay, so we definitely want to go with a new post-Return of the Jedi storyline. Like, they've made that perfectly clear, obviously with The Force Awakens and the now 3 novels that exist in that era after Return of the Jedi and before The Force Awakens. It's clear that they're going in a completely different direction in regards to how many children they have, if they even had children. In Luke's case, we don't know yet. They want to leave it a mystery because they want people to be filling the seats in the theaters. I guess that's the main focus, and everything else is becoming secondary. Now, in regards to bringing in, if you say things can fit into both, I don't think that would be very hard to do, especially with the story group the way it is now. Pablo Hidalgo wrote the Essential Reader's Guide back in the day. So, it's not as if the man doesn't know the stories. And Leland Shee is still on it from what I understand. I think that if they put some effort into it, they could easily make comics, novels, even a TV show that would fit both continuities, at least if it's not maybe a post-Return of the Jedi era, since so much is already different in that era. But I certainly think it should be done, and I hope that it will be. My general sense of it is, once this new trilogy is complete, we don't even know the books that are planned beyond Thrawn yet, which is coming out, I believe, in April of next year. We don't know what's coming after that. We don't know if they're going to do a lead-in to Episode 8, which is completely shrouded in mystery, even more so than Episode 7 was. And, yeah, I really think it should be done. That works that would fit both canons, or, just making new stories for the original canon as well. One or the other I would be happy with, because as it stands right now, you get a lot of Legends fans feeling a little left out these days.
Yes, definitely. And, I definitely know the feeling, because when it was just canceled, just outright canceled, and even though I hadn't read everything yet, which I still haven't, I knew that there were certain stories that were ongoing. I knew that there were some things that were not finished. I had not read The Force Unleashed 1 and 2 based on the video game, but from what I understood, there was a major cliffhanger apparently at the end of the second one.
Such a cliffhanger.
and they were supposed to come up with a third one, and now there's not a third one because, that's Legends, that's not canon, and that seems to be their reasoning. If it's not canon, if it's Legends, then we don't really have to do anything. And that's it's a very just and righteous being upset, that, hey, we want our stories continued. I fully understand any of the other fans of the expanded universe like myself that, want the stories continued. It's a timeline that's rich. It's there. Why not continue it? Why not, or at least finish off the stories that were left hanging? There's the whole Sword of the Jedi thing that was apparently left over. Some people claim that there was some stories written. There was other people that say, well, it wasn't written yet, but it was in the works. And but in either case, that got canceled. Well, maybe that should be finished. And just other things. Throughout there was there's too many things to list. But the point is that even while they're doing this new canon with the movies and the novels and stuff, and coming up with these brand new storylines and everything, which clearly people are enjoying, why not say, hey, you know what? Let's look at some of these unfinished projects and go ahead and just maybe produce, a Legends book per year, and just say, okay, let's at least finish these projects and let's just see how well they sell along with the other things that we're doing, and just find out, because I got a feeling that there's probably enough fans out there that would go ahead and pick it up. Plus, with all the renewed interest in Star Wars, and with the novels that are already being sold, there's going to be people that are already looking at the Legends novels because they're going off the shelves. They're still being bought. People are buying them as they get into Star Wars, and you don't have people necessarily getting online saying, "Hey, I can't figure this out. Why is this one not going with this one or anything?" No, people are understanding. If it's got the Legends banner, it's one timeline. If it doesn't have the Legends banner, it's another timeline. It's the new stuff. So, why not just go ahead and publish them side by side and have the Star Wars version of Dungeons and Dragons? New canon and original canon, Legends and new stuff. Why not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I think Dave and I were talking about on the last podcast, I mean, they're still making the Old Republic games. Like, there's more planned even beyond this. So, I mean, there's already kind of a shred of new Legends that millions of people are playing coming out right now, and no one seems confused.
And I'm not, and I'm not even into the video games, but I love the fact that they're still doing them. I'm like, wow, great stuff. What were you going to say, Danny? There?
I was just going to say, I don't see any flaws in what you're saying. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the first franchise to have multiple continuities. It won't be the last. Star Trek is going through it right now, and their fans seem to, regardless of how they feel about what do they call it now, the J.J. Abrams verse. Regardless of how they feel about it, it's very easy to differentiate for them where each story is taking place. So I don't really see the problem with that. I mean, and they came out right away and said, well, this is how it's going to work in the timeline. You have the original timeline, and then you have what happened in the JJ timeline. There's a split from the original. I mean, to someone who's already a huge Star Trek fan, that was an easy fix. That was an easy thing to differentiate, whether they like the new stuff or not. So I think that Star Wars could easily do that because we're some of the smartest and most passionate fans there are. So I don't really see the problem with that.
Yeah,
I'm not an expert. Yeah, we do. I mean, look at how it is today with the new canon. I mean, you have, 60, 70 different websites each day reporting every little bit of information that comes out. You have, I can't count how many different reaction videos were on YouTube to the recent Rogue One trailer. I mean, it's clearly as big as ever, and I think it would be even bigger if they brought in some Legends stories. Yeah. You'd have all the negativity being that comes out from some of the original canon fans, not you guys obviously, but that would be stopped. That would be stopped, and they would be doing podcasts and doing segments on the new Legend stories while everybody else is doing podcasts on the new canon stories, and everybody's happy. So I really, really wish that they would just do it already. But it's not up to us. But I do think that, yeah, absolutely, that's what they should do.
Yeah, because like you and I have talked in the past, on our private conversations, I mean, you bring up to me that, hey, they got this plan, over the next 10 years, and that's their business decision, and I know we've come to an agreement that, hey, that is their business decision. They can also make another business decision to go ahead and publish Legends along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then everybody is excited, everybody is happy, and that would stop for the most part. I'm sure there's always going to be naysayers, but that would really ease a lot of the tensions there. I don't think that the original canon fans are asking for a lot. I know you guys, most of you, aren't asking for the new movies to be made out of the original canon. You just want more and continuation of the story you have known and loved your entire lives, and I don't see what's wrong with that at all.
Exactly, and that there definitely isn't anything wrong with that. I mean, if I was a person who there's definitely things out there that I may not like, but it's like, if somebody wants more of it, then they should have it. I mean, I'm probably one of the few people out there that still hasn't really gotten into that Firefly thing where watch Firefly and Serenity. I haven't watched that yet. I know a lot of people that have, and boy, they're passionate about it. They want more, and I'm like, yeah, you should have more, And I'm, I think I saw like the debut episode of it over at a friend's house one time, and it's definitely. And then I saw like a random episode of DragonCon one time up at the little con suite where they had the food. I think they were playing episodes, and so I just kind of watched it a little bit that way. But yeah, I mean, it looked like a great series. It looked like one of those kind that you could really get into, and I just hadn't taken the time to sit down and do it. I'm going to do it one day. It's going to be one of those Netflix things because I got to save them the Netflix stew anyway. I'm just going to go, okay, let's spend an evening doing this. And I'll probably at the end I'll be all much of a brown coat as well as I am a Star Wars person. But yeah, definitely. Any fandom that if there's something that's canceled abruptly or that could be renewed, then yeah, they should people should have it. I mean, it's happened so many times before with with things both in speculative fiction and out of speculative fiction. Star Trek came back with movies, and then Star Trek: Next Generation. I mean, that's like one of the biggest franchises that came back. But then let's look at Doctor Who. It was gone for a while there. And then next thing you know, they decided to start doing new episodes again. Look at what a great fandom has suddenly come from that. So it's not, and of course these are television type things, but but still, I mean, it's a multimedia thing, and with Star Wars, you got the movies, you got the television, you got the books, you got the comic books, you got the video games. At least get the novels going again for Legends. I mean, is that really too much to ask? But we do got a lot of stuff happening now. When it does come to the new canon, there is the Rogue One movie coming up. And last year for The Force Awakens, there was a fella who was a terminally ill patient, and he had requested to see The Force Awakens before he died because he wanted to make sure that he got to see it. He wasn't sure if he could live long enough to see it in the theater. And that was Daniel Fleetwood. And he did wind up dying shortly after being able to see it. Well, I kind of expected this year that maybe some more patients might request something similar for Rogue One, since Lucasfilm, helped out Mr. Fleetwood. And sure enough, there's this guy named Neil Hanvey, who is a really huge Star Wars fan, and his wife and his nurse is asking people to do this hashtag. It's hashtag Rogue One Wish. So hashtag ROGUEONEWISH, all one word, all lowercase. Because he wants to make sure that he sees Rogue One before he passes away. And my stance is really that anybody that's terminally ill, and I mean they're just beyond the point where they could get healed, even through natural remedies. Then Lucasfilm or any fandom should honor such a request, and it doesn't matter that they did it last year for someone else. It shouldn't matter how many people they were to do it for. I think that if somebody really wants to see something, then it should happen. And so again, it's new canon, the expansion. We're all about the original canon, but we're also talking about, building bridges here. And the thing is this guy wants to see Rogue One. He needs to be able to go see it. So we as the expansion, we're supporting him. We would appreciate it if you that are listening would support him as well. Take a look at a link. I'll put the link in the description for this article at the dork side of the force.com where they talked about it, and you can go there and read over it. I think it's hit a couple of other websites as well. You may be able to Google it. But I would suggest looking over that and deciding for yourself, to support him, and why not support it? I mean, the guy may not make it. So, if he wants to see it, I say let him see it. And so, the Lucasfilm, if you're listening to us, we would love for you to let this guy see this film. And I'm sure James and Danny are both in agreement because we talked about this beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can't imagine what that family's going through. It's awful. I can only imagine if that was to happen to myself. Would I want some sort of national attention? Not really. But I know that, one of my deepest desires would be to see this movie. It would be utterly heartbreaking. Obviously there's plenty of other important things in life besides entertainment, but I think especially with a fandom like Star Wars, and you mentioned Doctor Who and Star Trek, this is something that's been a part of our lives. If you're in that fandom, it's been a part of our lives since as far back as we can remember. So I think that it's not unreasonable. I think that it's not self-serving in any way. Does good publicity come from it? Absolutely it does. But that's really not the point. The point is this gentleman loves Star Wars. He really wants to see this movie, and he might not live to the release date. So I don't really see how anyone can be against that, honestly. So we'll share that hashtag, and we're praying for you, Neil.
All right.
Yeah. I only just heard about that whole thing yesterday. After last year, I obviously had the feelings to do did this might occur, but it's like, why not? What harm could come of it?
That's right. That's right. Go ahead.
The movie's worth it for him.
Yeah. I hope he enjoys it, and that'll be a good thing. So, okay. So as we kind of close up here on this Relaunch podcast, we'll just do some final closing thoughts, and I guess Danny can speak first, and then James, and then I'll give some closing thoughts, and we'll close out here.
All right. Well, my closing thoughts are this. I only got into the online fandom about April of last year, so a year after that the decision was made to decanonize the original canon and move forward with the new. I've had multiple perspectives on this since then. At first I said, why can't they just adapt to the new canon? It's more Star Wars, that's really not a big deal. But, people like you, David, and you, James, have made me see that, it's really not about the label. It's about the stories and the characters and how we lived through them in our lives, and what they meant to us. So while there are plenty of people who have made the transition rather seamlessly, they would also enjoy original canon stories. I know one person in particular, I won't mention him by name, but he's an admin in my group. He absolutely loves the new canon, but he absolutely loved all the legends too. And I know that as quick as he will be to buy the next new canon book that comes out, he will also be just as quick to buy the next Legends book that comes out, hoping that happens shortly. So really, in summation, I think if we all work together and show Lucasfilm that there are fans on both sides who want this to happen in a reasonable, respectful, and honestly just pure-hearted way, I think we can make it happen. And that's really all I got. Thank you.
Outstanding, James.
Wow. Danny, I think you missed the worst of it. That's the screwy thing.
Oh, I've gone back and I've seen a lot of it, and that's what, originally made me so against Legends fans at first, because I was like, what is this? What is this thing? But yeah, I did definitely miss the worst of it.
Don't feel bad. Even I was like, for a minute there, kind of thinking, oh my gosh, these Legends fans are horrible. Wait, what am I saying here? Yeah, yeah. What can I say? Good to be back. I guess that's all for now.
Okay.
Dave?
Well, yeah, definitely. Because, again, I mean, I'm very much, I started the expansion back. I'd had the idea to start a Star Wars group about the expanding universe back when things got canceled, and because I was hoping that maybe we can convince Lucasfilm to go ahead and produce some more Legends stuff, and but at first I didn't quite start it, because I started to notice there were some other groups out there, and one of them was a particular group we won't mention right now, but they they had a pretty strong following, and some of the people in the other groups were already in that group, and I was like, okay, well, let's maybe this will be good, but with all the there was just a lot of negativity that was going on in that group, and I was just like, wow, and some of it coming from the admins, that was what was surprising to me. I mean, there was a lot of positive stuff too, and it was like, well, let's focus on the positive, guys, and I kept trying to, get that across. It was like, let's focus on the positive and leave this negative behind. And eventually, I just felt like because there were people that were looking at the new canon, they were reading the new canon, they were enjoying the new canon. This was way before, it's like over a year before The Force Awakens even came out, in theaters. I mean, I think Rebels had finally come on TV at that point, but people were enjoying it, or at least looking at it. But yet, if anybody ever mentioned that they had checked it out or looked at it or, God forbid, enjoyed it, it was like they were just gone from the group. I mean, kicked out.
You Bender scum, I'll kill you.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, and it was just ridiculous. And so I then went ahead and formed the group, the expansion, because it was like, that there are people out there that love the expanding universe that are also checking out the new canon. I wasn't. And again, I haven't bothered with any of the books yet. The only thing I've seen is the movie The Force Awakens, and I only saw that a couple of months ago. But with all this going on, it was like I felt that there needed to be a safe place where people that, were fans of the expanding universe, but if they also wanted to be fans of the new canon, they could be. But yet at the same time, people that were only fans of the expanding universe could be where they did not have to be inundated all the time with new canon stuff. And so this podcast, we've talked about both canons, but the thing is that ultimately, we have a very strict policy in the group where we don't promote the new canon, but we certainly don't bash it. Our focus is on the original canon, and there are other groups out there. There's that are either they're with the original canon, but they're very negative toward the new canon, or there's groups out there for the new canon that are negative about the original canon. And finally, after having my group for a while, I came across Danny here, and he had his group, and he was open to being, to making sure that there was no negativity about the original canon, because he had seen some of this in his group, and he had a very strict policy of no arguments on this. It's all Star Wars. So so to find out that he was very much promoting Star Wars, and he liked having people talk about all of it. That I saw as a way to start to build the bridges that needed to happen in the fandom, so that we're not so divided over this. You can it's okay to like the original canon and not want to get into the new canon. It's okay to be in the new canon and not want to have to go back and get all into the original canon. That's okay. But it's also okay to like both of them, and to get into both of them. And it's okay to be critical of any story that you don't like. You may like all the stories of this, but there's just one story that you don't like, or maybe you like half of the stories over here, but the other half you don't like. On either side, it's okay. It's okay to give honest criticism, and it doesn't mean you're not a fan. I mean, if you like Star Wars, if you want, and if you're a person that only watches the movies and you don't even get into the other books and stuff, that's okay too. If you like Star Wars, you're a Star Wars fan. Now, this is the podcast for the expansion. More and more in the future, we'll be mainly talking about the original canon, but every now and then, just like with this podcast, we're going to talk about the fandom, and we're going to talk about the differences with the new canon and original canon, and things like that. But our focus is on the original canon, because because fans of the original canon need a safe place that they can be, and that's what the expansion is there for. So we thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast today. We thank you for clicking on whatever link brought you here, and hey, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click subscribe, and make any comments down below. Let us know what you liked about it. Let us know anything that you might see need room for improvement, and we'll read them, and we appreciate it. So, but take care, and we're closing out at this point. This is the end of the first podcast in this relaunch. So take care, y'all. Everybody say bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.